Okay. It's recording. Sit down.
Did you watch the first season by any chance?
I watched half of it. I don't remember. Well, I do remember. I remember the twins.
Yeah.
And I
was the
remember
best one.
the Rock's one with anime Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Love him.
Okay, recording now.
Turn up the gain just a little bit. Yeah, it's recording. Hold on. I have to go see from that angle so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay. Yeah. Hold on. Do that again because I was still sitting down as you started.
So today, Star Wars Visions Season 2 just dropped on Disney+. But if you're watching it in the future, it dropped today, but we're not uploading it today. I'm uploading this on probably like Monday or Tuesday. So this past weekend it dropped, but we're recording it on the day it dropped, which was May the 4th. And so we're going to sort of break down the episodes and with that, but real quick, a little bit about you, why you really like the animation.
Yeah.
Animation
So,
background.
Hey, my name's Sam. On YouTube, I'm DoctorSiren. You might know me. I am currently an animation student, and I want to work in the game industry, but I've always loved just animation. So I'm kind of here to give like an animation perspective, and also because I like Star Wars. As you can see from my shirt, I like Star Wars, so you know.
And of course, I'm also a Star Wars and animation fan. Of course, if you've seen my reviews of Disney movies and DreamWorks movies and everything else, you know that I also like to talk about the animation aspect as well. So we're going to sort of break down each short and kind of give our thoughts on it in general. So the first one was, or I should say, so my thoughts on season 1. I had a few issues with season 1. A lot of that was just nitpicks though, like sometimes the line delivery may not have been the best, sometimes the acting may not have been the best. This season though, I don't think I had any issues with it. Every episode was a just absolute solid knocking out of the park. All the acting was fantastic, all the animation was fantastic. So the first episode was an episode called Sith, and it's from Elgar Studios. And by the way, season 1, which was strictly Japanese studios. This season is studios from all over the world. So we got people like Aardman, we got Punk Robot, we have all these other
Triggerfish. We have places from like France, South Africa,
France, Ireland, South Africa, London, like Mexico, all sorts
Tokyo,
of
and South Korea.
And each short is very reflective of that country's culture. They're all Star Wars stories. What's cool about Visions is that they're Star Wars stories, but they're not canon, so they can do whatever they want, and they can add their little touch to that country or that culture, whether that be the characters' accents or the score, or just the way anything is animated.
All like the costume design of like the culture that's represented is very shown through the animation and the designs of everybody, and you can tell even if they're not a human character, you can still tell the kind of culture that they're representing, and I think it's done in a very well thought out way, in a very like respectful way, especially because it's made by people who are from those cultures.
Yes. And season 1 kind of did that as well. There was one particular episode that was like an old black and white samurai movie, but my problem with it though was it just looked like it was an old black and white samurai movie, and then they like CGI'd over lightsabers over the sword, so it kind of like took me out of it because it just looked like somebody like photoshopped a bunch of Star Wars aesthetics over something that already existed. But this one looks like it was built from the ground up as a Star Wars story, like it was intended to be that way. So the first one is from Elgar Studios, which I assume is Mexican. It's called Sith. And the animation of this one very much reminded me of Into the Spider-Verse, with the way it kind of drops the frames and everything. And what's cool is that it's about somebody who's trying to go into this painting. And the differences between the real world and the painting world are so drastic, and they're so distinct to differentiate it, and it is so good.
Well, okay, how I interpreted it was, I interpreted it a little bit differently. I don't think she's going into the painting. I think it's more of a representation of her connecting with the light side, how she wants to get to that light side, but she still feels that darkness wanting to take over the painting. And that space where she does the painting is just representing like her happy place, sort of. It's not quite her going into the art, but it's her like going towards it. And it's very well done. The aspect ratio changes, and it's very painterly. If you see, like, it's much painted. It looks, again, like Spider-Verse, but it looks really good. There's a lot of painting, kind of like an abstractness to some of, like, the backgrounds, and, like, the use of color is quite incredible. Like, it's just
it really popped. It really popped.
It was such, like, a good hook into this season, and I thought it was, like, really well done. It got me tearing up at the end when I see good animation. I'm like, that's
that, just the story too, because it is such a great redemption arc story for this character as well, with the twist that they threw in. So, Episode 2 was from Cartoon Saloon.
Which they do like, they did Wolf Walkers?
Wolfwalkers, Secret of Kells.
Secret of Kells. And then a few other things that I haven't seen. But...
Yeah, that episode is called Scriptures Reach. And like you said, it is Secret of Kells, and that is very much what it looks like. It looks very much like that movie.
But it's very, very cute, just like a very distinct style. It's
an Irish studio, so all the characters have Irish accents, which is awesome. And it actually kind of reflects some of the mythology and culture of Ireland, because this is essentially the Star Wars version of the Banshee, which is an Irish mythological figure. Yeah.
Oh.
Which is an Irish mythological figure that is, the Weeping Banshee. So there's sort of a Star Wars version of that creature in this episode. It's about these kids going in to explore this cave to try and fight off this banshee, and it's terrifying. At the end of this episode is so intense. It is so good.
Sad.
It's a great ghost story, and it doesn't end on on the happiest note, but it's so good how it kind of reflects that ghost story. It's
kind of
that culture.
It's kind of like, again, like a parallel to the previous episode. Like what happens at the end, like just kind of like a contrast, like a contrast parallel to it, and it's very good, and it's just it was also quite sad, but I really liked the animation. It was again a contrast to the first one, where the first one was like 3D animation with a painterly style. This one was more of a storybook with a 2D animation, and it's everyone has very much like shapes to them. You can just tell, and everyone's kind of distinct, and it's showing off the different animation styles quite off the bat.
Yes. Episode 3, In the Stars from Punk Robot. I am not familiar with this studio, but it was a stop motion type of animation, and it also had sort of these chalk paintings as well, like these living chalk paintings that were also very vibrant.
They're like glitter.
And what was cool is that it's stop motion, so everything is sort of to scale. Like there's stormtroopers that come into this episode, and they look like action figures, like the size of an action figure. So it sort of gives the size difference between the models of the backgrounds and the factory and everything that's in this episode and the characters.
Well, I don't know if it was stop motion per se. It might have been claymation, which I think is like.
But it was definitely real. Like it was definitely you could feel human.
It either was 3D animation made to look like toys or look like clay, which is very often because it's much quicker, takes less time.
Yeah,
it's much easier. But it also could have been claymation. There's just some elements to it. It may have been again like claymation or stop motion with of course with digital elements added on over to it because of how like some of the things were like they wouldn't have been able to, I feel like, make that properly, but it was still very impressive. The characters were very like distinct. I hadn't seen anything like them before in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, they were great creatures. Like they came with all these new Star Wars creatures we haven't seen before too, and their relationship, because it's about two sisters, was also very well written. Mm-hmm. It's sort of their relationship with their late mom, and sort of how that ties back into it as well.
They
so
look
good.
Sort of like, if you know like tieflings from Dungeons and Dragons, and like
they did look like that.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
They look kind of like tieflings, especially the sister. They remind me a lot of Kubo from Kubo and the Two Strings.
Yeah.
See, I thought this studio was Leica.
No.
When I saw the trailer, I thought it was, and then I looked it up.
I would like to see Leica try their hand at this though.
They would take them a little while, I think, but
they only release like one movie every like 5 years now.
But I mean, hey, they're funded by.
They're all good though. Yeah. They're all worth the wait.
They got the funding, so they can do it.
Yet.
They're all.
There are some like movies I like more than others, but they haven't missed yet. Paranorman is my least favorite movie, probably.
I just remember that movie is what taught me what rigor mortis was.
yeah. So the next was from Aardman, who of course we all know from Wallace and Gromit. We all know from Flushed Away. And
Chicken Run?
Yeah, Chicken Run. Yeah. And I reviewed all those during DreamWorks Month, and you know that what I praised besides the animation was the visual gags. They are really good at doing just little background, subtle visual gags, and some of the foreground that are also really good. There's a lot of that here too. The first few shorts are relatively somber, they're relatively dark.
Emotional.
A lot more emotional. This one's a bit more lighthearted. This one's a bit more fun.
It's a lot
more playful.
It's like if it's kind of like the Lego versions of Star Wars. It's sort of like there's some jokes in there. It's not quite as just satirical
it's not as self-aware.
It's not as like full parody of itself as Lego is, but it's still got that fun element that like kind of comedic relief in between all these like.
It's got elements they wouldn't normally get away with in like actual Star Wars. Like the villain in this episode, Her hair looks
It's like
just
the
like
Darth Vader,
Vader's helmet.
like the thing he wears on the helmet.
And her pod racer is like a TIE fighter.
And the
It's
little
hilarious.
thing they shoot lasers. It's literally
It
just a
looks-
mini
it's the
Death
Death
Star. And the girl's name, like the main
Is
girl, her
Annie.
name is Annie. And her mom literally says, "Well, I am your mother."
Yeah, and then you have like an R2 droid who actually no, it's a Z1.
Yeah,
but it also reflects the culture.
They're British, so they say
They
Z1.
pronounce it Z1, which is a nice little
British.
touch because that's how they pronounce it in that country. And he looks like a dog. It's like they took R2D2 and then
turned
put
him
him on
into
the body of a wiener dog and give him a little wagtail, so it's kind of cute. Yeah, it's like K9. It's like,
K9.
it's a Doctor Who crossover. I would love to see that. So yeah, and I thought the relationship between the daughter and her mom were also very well done. This is a great episode. It's very playful, very fun.
The animation was...
Yeah, a lot of great jokes.
The animation was very cute, of course, as you know, like with Wallace and Gromit stuff. Very round, very smooth. It very much an opposite or a contrast to the previous short with that claymation or that style, where that one was more, like kind of square, and like there's more like angular shapes, whereas Aardman's style is very like round, very smooth, and it was like they're both like these stop motion type styles, but it shows how they can be very different, and it was just very cool to see that.
Yeah, actually, this episode 5 was Journey to the Dark Head Studio Mirror, which I'm not familiar with.
They're a South Korean. I think I looked it up. I think these are the South Korean studio.
Yeah, it looked more like a traditional anime style, very much like Star Wars Vision Season 1, going back to that, where all of it was anime, different styles of anime, but all of it was anime. This is, again, more of that traditional anime style, but there was some really great lighting.
I love lighting.
Well.
It's like my favorite thing, and it was gorgeous.
And also, those were a bit, the other ones before this were a little bit more playful. This one is more traditional Star Wars story mythology, where it's, I don't want to say cliche, but it's a little overdone this one, but how many times is Sith going to convince a Jedi come over to the dark side, right? How many times have you seen that? This is very much that. It's the classic, let's do that. But also the score in this episode.
All the score and all the episodes is so good.
Especially during the lightsaber fight during this.
Yeah.
Was so good. And there was really great voice acting in this. Like I said, it was more of a traditional anime style, and it pretty much had like that anime voice acting to it.
See, where...
Especially from the villain. Oof.
I thought all the voice acting was great, except for, I think he's like Tool or whatever his name was, the guy, the Jedi.
Yeah.
It felt very anime, but it felt kind of like a little bit too exaggerated. The mouth, the sinking of the mouth didn't quite line up.
That may have been a style choice though.
No, but for everyone else it did. Just for him, it felt just a little off, and like some of his lines felt a little too exaggerated, but it's fine. That's just like that was just my personal what I personally took away from that, just from like his voice acting. But I thought like the animation was great, of course, like the lighting, and I just I love
it's not like that one episode in season 1 where everyone sounded super bored. Where it was
Which one was that?
It was like his apprentice was like, "Run!" I'm like, dude, your apprentice is about to be killed. Are you like not screwed up?
I didn't watch all of season 1, so I don't remember.
There was an episode in season 1 where the lines were good. Like it was really well written, and there were a lot of good ideas. But the line delivery was just so boring. But this was not an issue this season, which is great. Actually, it's called Spy Dancer, which is Studio Lacachette, which of course is a French studio.
I don't think it's pronounced like that.
It's
probably Lachette.
Yeah, I'm mispronouncing it. I apologize.
I took French for 2 years in high school.
I apologize for butchering the pronunciation of your country's animation studio. I apologize. We're stupid Yanks over here in America. So.
Hey, speak for yourself. I think I'm pretty smart.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, so, but it very much reflects how there's French accents in Star Wars as well. The Twi'leks, right?
Yeah.
You have the blue Twi'lek Jedi.
Yeah.
Right?
What's her name?
Or no, Ayla Secura.
Sakura. Yeah.
We're seeing someone different. Ayla Secura. Yeah, she has a very thick French accent. There's a lot of that too, and it's a great espionage story, as the title Spy Dancer implies.
The animation is gorgeous. Like the flowing fabric is just so fluid. It's just like so pretty, and like the designs for everyone is like just very nice. And I really like it. I really like I like how the stormtroopers, like their helmets, they look like frogs. It's silly.
Yeah. And I like how there was a lot of emotion in this one too, especially the end. And the main character has heterochromia, which is not just a character design choice, it's actually important to the story.
And a lot of it
later on.
Yeah, so their people have that thing. So like you see multiple characters have it for like the dancers and like the people who are doing the show. All of the characters there all have heterochromia. They have like a blue eye and a yellow eye. And it was just it was very pretty. I called the twist so early in because I look at Josh and I'm like, I think this is gonna happen. Like, I think this is what, like, I'm just making it out of there, like, a random guess, I'm grasping, but I think, my theory is, and I tell him my thing, and I turned out to be right, and I felt so smart, because I was so scared to say that just in case I was wrong and sounded stupid.
And there were a few episodes in season 1 where I'm like, this episode was setting something up, and then just ended. But they could continue that story on later. By the way, none of the season 1 storylines continue in the season. These are all new stories. But this is another one of those where I'm like, I hope this continues on with what happens at the end of this episode. I hope they continue this story and this particular character in a different capacity, whether that be another long-form show or whatever. It was definitely probably the most powerfully emotional of all these shorts, just because it was just so good. The characters and everything, just so emotional, and they had a really great, exciting spy action, very reminiscent of, like, a couple of the later Mission Impossible movies, but of course more of a Star Wars aesthetic. The next one was from 88 Pictures, who did Troll Hunters, which I will say I did not like the ending of Troll Hunters, but that is not a reflection of the animation studio, that's more a reflection of the writing. And this is called Bandits of Golak, and it is very reminiscent of the country of India, which again, Star Wars aesthetic, but the planet, everything about it, the buildings,
the culture is very much represented.
The characters, all India.
Their accents, their traditional like outfits, the way the architecture in the places they go to is just like the neon lights. It just felt very much like what you would see as like a proper representation of India. But I'm not one to say that because I'm white. I don't know.
As soon as this episode started, as soon as I saw the animation, my jaw was on the floor because it is just so jaw-droppingly realistic and so expressive and just so gorgeous.
Whereas I had the exact opposite opinion, actually. So I thought the animation was very pretty and such, but I thought that their movements and their actual expressions felt a little bit stiff. Like, they felt very hesitant when things would happen. They would react a little bit too late. Their movements were as far as they could have gone. It felt like they could have just put a little bit more expression into it. It looked very pretty, but I felt like their expressions could have been a bit more not full of life, but it just felt like you could have exaggerated a little bit more with it. But I did think it was very pretty. Just some of the movements felt a little bit like, it kind of was like, oh, that looks a little bit like you could have just gone a little bit further with that.
It was a fun heist story, too.
Yes.
If you remember that one scene in the Solo movie, Star Wars story, where they're all on the train, this whole episode, most of this episode is like that. And that was really fun. And the second half of this episode is kind of a different direction. But it's still, by the end of the episode, I was like, I want to see this one continue as well, to see what happens later on with what happens to the sister and how her brother reacts to that. So that was also a really, really fantastic episode. The action in this was also really well choreographed, along with the score. The score, of course, was music from India. So we have the lightsaber
traditional
fights.
Instruments and such.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars. It has that Star Wars feel to it, but it has Indian influence.
Yeah, it was just
so score in this was
the
amazing.
score in every episode was very good. With like different instruments to reflect the style of the actual animation and like what the studio is doing. And it was. I love the two things I love most in movies are usually the lighting and the score, and so I just was like very much appreciative of like good music. I was like, ooh, this is like great background. It's just very nice. Just fits so well in.
Episode 8, The Pit from I can't remember something Shotio and Lucas Arts. So this again.
This was a Japanese studio.
Yeah, very much. Again, going back to that traditional anime style that season 1 had. And the story was great because it's very reminiscent of things like The Dark Knight Rises, where it's these people slaving away in the pit so they can mine kyber crystals for the Empire, and one of the workers happens to escape and form a rebellion so they can help free the people that are in this pit. Again, very much goes back to that, let's rebel against the Empire, traditional themes of Star Wars, but it has an anime aesthetic to it, and it was gorgeous.
And the lighting was incredible. Yeah. Like the kyber crystals were so pretty. Like they're represented as these kind of quartz, like a rainbow quartz type thing, where it's like this clear crystal, but it's got like rainbow hues through it. Because if you think about it, like kyber crystal then can be like any color, and this way they would choose from that rainbow that's inside of it. I just think that's like really cool. Like, it has like it gives it the sense of like it has the not the opportunity, but it has the ability to be any of these colors for any of the influences that take it, which I think is really cool.
And this is also a bit of a darker story. I mean, it ends on a hopeful note, obviously, because it's Star Wars, but
there is a turning point where the people realize
we're doing this.
I was like, they're not, surely they won't. Oh, they did.
Oh, they did go that far. Oh, this is dark. So, yeah. But yeah, again, it ends up very helpful note though. Fantastic episode all around. Very reminiscent.
There's an end credit scene that just shows like something. I was like, oh, I wish they would have shown us that thing that the guy was doing, and then they show us that thing in the end credit scene, and it's so pretty.
Yeah, it ended up very good. And then the final episode is called Owl's Song. It's from Triggerfish, and it is from
South Africa.
South Africa,
yeah.
Yes.
Cape Town.
Yeah. So if you played the game Tearaway Unfolded, it reminded me of that.
And then I've never played that game, but it reminded me of games like Kirby's Epic Yarn and just those sort of things where it's
they
like very.
They look like patchwork stuffed animals.
They look like they're made of fabric and like fuzzy cloth, and it's so cute.
Realistic. Like I was hoping I could go through the screen and grab them.
It was
because
like
they're so soft. Like I want to hug these.
It was like a
3D
version of like a toy 3D version of like a Ghibli.
Ghibli.
I don't know pronounce it. So Ghibli film, like the clouds, especially how they looked. It was very gorgeous. The design was so cute. The little girl reminded me of Anais from Amazing World of Gumball.
Yeah.
Like she was like a little animal. She was so cute. It was so pretty.
This one was definitely the most child friendly of the piece. So all these other ones were like dark, except for the Potter's one. But all the other ones were like, this one's dark, this one's dark, this one's hopeless.
Well, the one with the sisters, it was still, but it was still like things going on.
Yeah, then it's like this one's lighthearted and cute.
Yeah, and the voice acting of the little girl was amazing. You could tell it was a child because she sings, and you could tell that's a child's voice vocalizing and not like an adult doing a child voice, which you get sometimes. But it was very pretty. I love the designs of everything, and it was just gorgeous, and I very much enjoyed it. Very cute.
And then of course there's a lot of repeating themes in this. A lot of
like,
it is also
family.
You discovered your powers. I'm going to train you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of finding your destiny, and family, and then also, of course, Star Wars, dark and light, that sort of contrast, you're going to have that Star Wars, But a lot of family, I think every episode, except for the first one, had a distinct, family to it. The first one, I guess she had her little robot, but I think that's family.
Not really.
I think that's family, okay?
They're almost the same character.
But also, more than one involved painting. You think of the first episode, she's painting that picture of the dark and light. You think of the one with the two sisters, there's the painting on the stone, the glittery painting. You think of the one with the pit, the guy is spray painting to show, the people that he knew in this pit. And it's a lot of, just artistry to represent, people's lives and throughout, what they experienced. I think that's very cool. As an artist, I'm like, I connect with that. I understand that. I get that. That's me.
Yeah. So yes, overall, very fantastic season. I love the stories they do with this. So, like I said, every single episode, I would not change a thing about this. All of this was perfect, which is a little bit more than I could say for season 1. Like I said, I had nitpicks with those. Every episode of this one was perfect. I loved all the stories. I loved all the characters. I loved all the acting, the animation. All of it's fantastic. I cannot wait to see if this gets to season 3. What animation studios are going to do? Maybe season 3 would be maybe sort of continuing on from some of the dangling plot threads they left with the other episodes.
Well, I feel like the reason they leave it open-ended because then it's we don't always get to see every story fleshed out, and I think it's actually kind of nice that way. And then also because each studio was given that chance to show this short story, then they won't, then the more studios will get a chance in season 3, we'll have different studios will get a chance. And then it kind of just leaves it up to interpretation. And also, since Star Wars is this huge universe, technically these are canon. They could be canon technically because think of how big Star Wars is. You usually just see what's going on with the Skywalkers. That's mainly what we focus on in Star Wars.
The other one was more of poking fun.
Well, yeah, but that could totally be a thing because you think of the these also aren't canon, but the Jedi Academy books with Rowan, that character, he wanted to be a pilot, but he ends up going to the Jedi Academy. That's very much what the Armin one was. It was just very the family, it's sort of a parody of it.
At it lovingly.
Yeah, and it was, and I just think that a season 3 of new stories would also be very good. And I'm excited to see if they do that and what animation studios they would choose, because I think the choice of choosing specifically ones from different parts of the world and they're representing different cultures, it was very cool to see, and it was just very nice, and I thought it was just an enriching experience. I don't know. I liked it.
This is me to say, but I find it funny that Disney's animation department is losing so much money now.
That's what I said.
Flops, that they're now outsourcing their animation to other countries just to make bank.
I turned to Josh and I go, it's kind of funny, like, how the animation in Star Wars Visions is so well done, whereas Disney's own animation studio is not doing so hot right now. They've had some real stinkers.
Right? Even COVID, COVID was their excuse for 2020, but it was like, turning red. We're gonna drop this straight onto Disney Plus for free.
But like, even
you don't have to pay $20 for it.
Like the last.
Before. And then Lightyear was pretty bad.
It was okay. Lightyear was gorgeous. It was so pretty. It was like realistic, but the story it had so much potential, and then it was just like
also short.
Abandoned.
And
it was
same thing with Strange World. A lot of potential, very much missed because it's just lazy.
Yeah, I feel like they have a good idea that they want to go with, but then they focus.
My fingers that Wish ends up being really good.
They focus, I think, too much on the visuals and like being like, look how like it's kind of like Avatar 2. Like let's see how pretty we can make this. But then the story.
By Avatar, you mean James Cameron Avatar?
Yeah, not.
No, last time
not Superman. I mean, I said Avatar 2. I mean, I guess Avatar 2 would be Korra.
Yeah.
Technically,
Last Airbender is amazing. Well, the Last Airbender cartoon is amazing. The movie sucks.
Yeah. But like Avatar 2, like the movie of James Cameron, like it's just very pretty. But you know, if you think about like Soul was amazing. Yeah, that was a great movie.
So good.
Soul, they put that on Disney Plus. That's because it was right as COVID was hitting and such.
Yeah, it was like
that was great. But yeah, everything besides like I've kind of like lost. I'm not really interested in the movies coming out. I'm more interested in the movies coming out from other studios.
Spider-Verse.
I'm so excited.
Mario. There's a reason Mario grossed $1 bazillion and counting.
The Mario movie is my favorite movie. Spider-Verse used to be my favorite anime movie, but now Mario is just my favorite movie. Another one I'm excited for is the Mutant Mayhem, the TMNT movie. I'm very excited for that. That looks great. Yeah. The animation style is just adorable. I think Spider-Verse was a great influence on the animation industry as a whole because you can see people like. They're like, oh, we can incorporate more of a comic feel or like a 2D feel into our 3D. So you think of like Spider-Verse, of course, who's kind of like the pioneer of that. And then you look at like Puss in Boots and Last Wish. It looks very much like a storybook. And you think of the first episode of this Star Wars Visions series, it was very Spider-Verse influenced. And I think it's a very good way the animation series are going. Like with Mutant Mayhem, you can tell it's very like, it just feels like it's got the lower FPS, but it's used purposefully. And it's just the animation's like, very much
it looks a bit browner because it's supposed to reflect
like
it's a sewer.
Like toned, yeah. It's sort of like if they made the wood style from the 2012 TMNT, like that show.
Yeah.
I think it was 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wooden style. If they took that and took it farther and like stylized them more, if they combined the wood style with the most recent TMNT, Rise of the TMNT. They took that, combined it, and added a little bit of Spider-Verse into it. It looks so cool, and I'm just very excited for like the animation that's coming out this year.
There was a time where
except for Elemental,
Disney was like the only people that could really do animation, and then DreamWorks came along, and other animations came along, and now pretty much anybody can do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Release your movie independently, and then Netflix will buy it and put it on
you see people on YouTube,
so,
independent like teams and people on YouTube who are just like making things for ad revenue or just because they want to make things. And it's incredible, and it's just like, wow, Disney, you have good animation, but where's your story? Like, they're trying to branch out with their animation styles, as you can kind of see with their more recent releases.
But it means nothing if the story.
No, but the thing is, for me, it feels like a purposeful effort to try to get away from their style that it just feels not that good. Like, you can kind of with Elemental that's coming out. It looks so bad.
The animation is really good. But
No. The animation, the world itself, the animation of the world is gorgeous. The characters look so bad. They look unfinished. It looks like something that a animation student from like the early 2010s to like mid 2010s would have posted on YouTube as a demo reel for what they did in college. So from that, it would be great. Like that would be like, wow, that's amazing. It's not. For like if it was an animation student from a college, that would be amazing. It's like, wow, you did really well. But for a professional studio that's been doing this for decades, it looks unfinished. The character designs, I don't like how Ember looks. She looks really weird and pointy. The story doesn't seem interesting. I don't know why I said interesting like that.
Romeo and Juliet again.
It's just Romeo and Juliet, Zootopia.
Zootopia.
I found
Prejudice is bad.
I found the junior novelization at Walmart the other night, and I opened it and I was like, yeah, that seems like what was going to happen. That's kind of obvious. Whereas other studios, I'm more excited just to see where they take the characters, because honestly, if you're doing things with characters that exist, it's fine as long as you're just not doing it as a cash grab. Whereas if like with Mario, it was a great video game adaptation. It was amazing, and it sets up that sequel so perfectly. It gives you space because it's like you can bring in Rosalina, you can bring in Daisy, you can bring in Wario and Waluigi. Like there's so much you can do. And then with like the TMNT, it's like a different take on all these like medias of it. And Spider-Man, of course, like Spider-Verse. But then Disney's like, okay, we're finally, guys, look, we're trying to be original, but we're not doing it that well.
Yeah.
And also, we gotta get some stuff together, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they lost in 2018 to Spider-Verse.
And, yeah.
Wreck-It Ralph and Incredibles 2, because those were both very mediocre films.
Wreck-It Ralph 2, Incredibles 2, yeah. Wreck-It Ralph, the original was gorgeous.
Both very mediocre films, and Spider-Verse was amazing. And then last year, they lost to Pinocchio. Turning Red lost Pinocchio, not their live action Pinocchio.
No, but
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And that was a great movie too. I mean, I didn't like the way it ended, but I did think that was a very interesting way of doing it. It's a very different story. It was very much Guillermo del Toro's own version of Pinocchio. It was very different than all the other versions. And so I liked when he did that. So I think it rightfully deserved that award. So.
I'm pretty intrigued to see for like next year's Oscars, like what's going to win Best Animated, because
there's a lot of great animation this year.
I know Disney won't win. I know Elemental probably won't win.
We don't know how Wish will turn. Wish actually looks pretty good.
Okay. Wish looks pretty good, but I know that Elemental won't win because it just feels like not the greatest. But like obvious contenders you can see already: Spider-Verse 2, Mario, TMNT. You know, like Wish.
Yeah.
The animation for that is still pretty. Like I just think already like that it looks great. It's going to like it's sticking with their normal like Frozen kind of Tangled style of that, but that's fine. Like that's what we expect, and that's kind of what we want. Yeah, very fairy tale.
And I hope the villain in this one is an actual villain, and it's not misunderstood or a twist villain. Like, yeah. Like the last like really evil villain we had was Hans.
Yeah, Hans. That was such a good
twist.
Which
was 10 years ago.
And then it's because they had all those. It's either all the villains now are twist villains, or they're like not fully a villain, which is fine, but it's kind of overdone. You need a good mix.
At some point, you need to have like a villain that you root against. Like that's why the ones when you think of this, you think of Scar, you think of the evil queen,
you think of the evil ones,
you think of Frollo, you think of Mother Gothel, you think of all the ones that are despicable and have no redeeming qualities, because that's why you want to root against them.
Exactly. Gives you like that option.
It's funny you want to make your character complex, but keep them evil.
Well, we can have redeemable villains, like because at the other point, that villains are antagonists.
Yeah.
But I feel like the way Disney does it, it's just like it feels like they're trying not too hard, but they're like doing like every single one like that.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do a fairy tale, you gotta have a clear one.
The fairy tale, So with fairy tale, the style is like there's a very clear villain, there's very clear force to go against, like as if like blah blah like castles fighting dragons, like the dragon's the bad guy, like whatever. That's like an example. Like fairy tales, it's very like for children, cut and dry. Like there's like maybe a little bit of complexity if you go into a more detailed version of the story, but even then, like there's still like you can tell who is who, and I think that they should go with that.
Yeah, anyways, we tangented.
I don't know. We just went off on Disney. I have this conversation so much with people.
Which is fine though.
Because I'm an animation studio, or I'm not an animation studio. I'm an animation student, and so I have like friends who love animation because they're also animators, and we talk a lot about this sort of stuff. And I go off like I have very strong opinions like against like Disney. I'm like animation not the greatest. That's sort of my perspective. Encanto, it was great. I love the dad from Encanto. I wish they had made a Funko Pop of him, but they did not.
But none of their animated films in 2022 were good, so all three of them were garbage. So yeah, I mean some were worse than others, but yeah. The most watchable of those, well actually none of them were watchable, but
I don't even think I watched them. That's the thing.
You saw Lightyear.
I saw Lightyear, but the other ones most of the stuff that Disney's put out in the last few years, I've just been uninterested, and why did I say interested like that? I've just been uninterested, and I've heard from no. They wouldn't enunciate it. Also, I didn't even live there. Like I lived here most of my life. But they I didn't watch their more recent ones except for a couple of them because I just was not interested in it. Disinterested, yeah. I was just not interested in the thing. I was like, this is kind of boring looking. The animation's eh. And I've heard reviews from people online, and my friends, they were like, it was okay, it wasn't great, and I just couldn't find the time, and I forgot because it wasn't.
Because we're talking about the unforgettable things.
It wasn't. Yeah, it was one. It was the forgettable things. It wasn't something that grabbed my attention.
It wasn't everyone went and saw this. It made $1 billion, like Frozen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think they're trying to grab onto the successes that they used to have, like the big successes, and so they try to pick out the elements from those
We've
movies.
gotten too big for the rich. Like, we're too big to fail. We don't need to try anymore.
Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So what they do, like with Frozen, like they'll see like, oh, what worked really well with Frozen, and they try to replicate that, but
And
then it doesn't work because we've already seen it. We want either like, I know I keep like switching between like, oh, we want something new, but we want the old thing. It's like, stick with what you're good at, but incorporate new things into that. Don't take old things and try to rehash it.
Toy Story 2, a fantastic example of how to do a sequel.
Yeah,
because
that was good.
The world.
Expanded the world, brought new characters.
Shrek 2 also fantastic. Expanded the world of the first movie.
Yeah.
As well.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then it wasn't just like, let's do the same thing over and over.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas they used to do with like, they would just take the concept and flip it on its head, like with like Little Mermaid. They'd be like, well, what if the girl wanted to be a mermaid? That makes sense.
Yeah. I was like, what if the mermaid wants to be human? Well, we'll do the sequel where her daughter wants to be a
Reverse it. And they used to do that a lot.
Lady and the Tramp 2. It's the girl who's the street dog and the boy who's the...
Those were all like the direct-to-video kind of like...
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, I think... I mean, it was kind of like a good conversation like to have, though, because it, like, I'm an animator, and you do film stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just kind of perspectives from that, because I talk about this a lot with people I know. So yeah.
Vision Season 2, though, it was fantastic. I thought it was amazing. As of me, it has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which does not surprise me.
Which, I mean, it just came out also.
Well, they're just came out yesterday. A lot of them just came out.
Oh, you're right, yeah. But it was gorgeous, incredible. The lighting was so good. The score, the sound design, character design, just like the culture represented in it. Gorgeous, beautiful. I love it.
And I was like, how can I rank these? And it's hard to rank them because they're all not going to work. Like I said,
they're all similar in the sense that they're all like Star Wars and they all have like these connecting themes to them, but they're all so different from each other. They all like kind of explore different things, and so it's kind of hard to do it because the animations between all of them is so different that it's really hard to like rank them from each other. So
yeah, because the first one I was like, how can I rank? I'll just do nitpicks. Sometimes it was the voice acting was off, or the story didn't flow as well as it should have. But all these were amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah, so anyway, that's our thoughts on season 2 of Visions. So, yeah, well, obviously you can find me if you watch this here on my channel, and then there's DoctorSiren.
There's DoctorSiren, you can find me there. You can find me, I'm DoctorSiren basically everywhere. If you can't find me on those things, it's DoctorSiren. Try DoctorSiren art, because sometimes DoctorSiren is taken. Just find me on there. I do art, I do animations, I do music. Yeah, I also write stuff, like fanfiction, or whatever,
and
you know.
And of course, you know, I do trailer reactions, movie reviews, TV reviews, all that stuff. So, yeah, so that is our thoughts on Visions 2. And we're seeing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 tonight, so we might get some thoughts on that.
Exactly. Well, yeah, thanks for watching. I don't know how to end a video that's filmed face like this, because normally I just draw.
Yeah.